Well, good evening and welcome to the Oak Point Nature Preserve in Plano, Texas. Tonight's exercise is the first in a multi-part review of the Fenix LR40R V2 searchlight. I want to thank Fenix Lighting for sending me this light and making the review possible. I would like to point out that this is a dedicated searchlight, and my personal use case for lighting systems is wilderness search and rescue. So this review, field test, and subsequent field test are going to be heavily oriented towards people who are professional users and involved in either search and law enforcement or a search and rescue capacity. So I just want to get that piece of business out of the way. I respect people's time, and so if you're not actively involved in SAR, some of the commentary and maybe even some of the field tests may not make a bit of sense, but I want to get that out right now. Okay, if you're in the game, how do you determine what goes in the kit for a particular op? Well, everything in life is a trade-off. I like to use a mental visualization of a balance. On one end of the scale, you have performance and features. On the other end of the scale, performance and features have to be weighed against weight, form factor, UI, burn down, carry and deployment, and so forth. I'm going to talk a bit about these issues in the next couple of chapters. If you're already familiar with the light, you already understand the features, the UI, and so forth, you are welcome to skip those chapters and go directly to the chapter titled Output Modes. This light has 4 lighting modes: spot, flood, combined flood and spot, and something called flash. I'm not going to discuss flash tonight. I'll probably cover that in the second review. The peak output for spot is 3,000 lumens and approximately 197,000 peak candela. That number is rounded. All the candela numbers are rounded. The peak flood output is 12,000 lumen, approximately 28,000 peak candela. The peak combined output of both flood and spot is 15,000 lumens with an approximate 204,000 peak candela. There is a light sensing circuit, so that will throttle the output down if the light is in close proximity to something else, and of course you can also use that as a power bank. Now, what do I balance that against? Well, what's the first question you ask when you hear something like 15,000 lumens? Most people are going to say, okay, well, for how long? That's an excellent question. What I like to look at is the performance envelope of the light and what is the steady state. Well, thankfully, Fenix Lighting does provide a comprehensive burn down chart. I've printed that out and blown it up here. Let's go over it very briefly. Now, up here at the top, you see peak, spot, and flood output, and combined, those are going to ramp down fairly quickly, but over the course of several minutes. It's very hard to see in this chart, but it looks like when you get down to the steady state here, which is around 3,000 lumens, you've got anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 minutes out to close to 20 minutes, depending on what mode you were in. The most gentle ramp down is right here, which is your high spot, and I call this the critical region of the burn down chart because this shows where you really have pushed the light to its limit if you're using output levels within one of the modes in a constant on manner. So there's a huge difference between using something constant on for many minutes or hours at a time versus intermittent use, which might be anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes at a much higher level of output. So I really recommend spending time studying these charts, because even though this is theoretical, it's under laboratory conditions, this tells me at the steady state, doesn't matter, spot, flood, or combined, if I'm running medium or higher, the steady state of the light is in this kind of 1500 to 3000 lumen band, and this is the critical region. So that's kind of my initial analysis and calculus when I have access to this data for a light. In terms of weight and form factor, this is about a 2-pound light. You pick it up, you really notice. I carried this in a preliminary exercise for nearly 75 minutes in my hand. Trust me, it reinforces the old adage that ounces are pounds and pounds are pain. However, even at 2 pounds, this is on the lighter end of the spectrum relative to a lot of high lumen dedicated searchlights, some of which go up to 4 or 5 pounds. Now, I have average size hands. This will give you kind of an idea. In terms of carry, I would be hesitant to recommend carrying this in your hand. We're getting close to summer here in Texas. One of the things I noticed in my preliminary testing was this surface gets very slick when your hands are sweaty. There is a holster provided, and I'll show you that before we get started. I would recommend probably holster carry. And then the last thing I need to talk about, and this is a very important consideration, is fuel source. This is an internal battery. That means it can be recharged, but it cannot be hot swapped in the field. Now, different people are going to have different views on that. My personal view is there's certain assets in the kit, headlamps, left shoulder long throw light, free light, certain backup lights, that there's not even a conversation. Without question, I will not take out any asset whose battery cannot be hot swapped in the field. You know the drill. Everything comes down to SMEAC. Situation and mission determine execution. Execution strategy determines what's in the kit. This is a specialized search asset, so I might very well consider this for, say, an area search, a targeted area search with a fairly easy ingress where I know that my anticipated time of usage is going to be within that critical area that I showed you in the burn down chart, or I'm going to use it primarily as an intermittent asset, maybe no more than 1 to 2 minutes at a time. I would not take it on a tracking search, and tracking searches are, especially in the wilderness, that's what I get called into the most. So that's how my calculus tends to work in that regard. Your situation is different, your considerations are different, but that's something you really want to think about heavily before you click that add to cart button. What I'm going to do next is go over the UI real quickly, and then I'm going to show you how I'll be carrying this light tonight. In terms of UI, everything is controlled by a central button and a rotary switch. Fenix talks about modes A through D, but there are no A, B, C, D icons here. Those modes simply stand for spot, flood, combined, and flash, so why talk about A, B, C, D in the first place? I can't really see these icons all that well. Thankfully, the state we're in now is lock. You really don't need the icons because this rotary switch can only be rotated one way, and it only goes so far, and it takes you through spot, flood, and then combine, and that's it. Then you rotate it back. We use the button to go to flash. I'll show all that in part 2 of the video. And quite honestly, you don't even need the icons, because trust me, the beam will tell you what mode you're in. And then of course you use the central button to toggle through the output levels within each mode. Now you can get used to this. Like I said, I've already done a preliminary exercise. It's very easy to use with average size hands, one-handed. The 2 comments I'll make are, like I said before, and really think about this, this gets very slick with sweaty hands. I've tried using it with light gloves. With light gloves, it works okay. But if I put, say, my mechanics cold weather gloves on, forget it. You're going to have to take the gloves off in order to work this UI. Now, in terms of carry tonight, you can see I've taken the holster and I've rigged it up on the left shoulder of my ruck. It is truly amazing what you can do with Velcro straps and some duct tape, but I just use the Velcro straps here. So I'm going to see how well this carries in this configuration tonight. We're going to get out in the preserve, run through some realistic exercises, and we'll see exactly what this light can do. All right, we're getting started tonight with some searches across opposite edge of the lake as I pan here to the left in the low output level. We've got distances from 80, 90 yards out to in excess of 150 at this point. Let me bump this up. Yeah, you can really see the particulates in the air tonight. And one more time. So this is something a little different. Normally I would use thermal night vision as my go-to detection device. Let's say I don't have thermal with me tonight, and so I've got to scan the edge of this lake with my light, which is what I'm doing right now. We're in the low output mode. Bump that up one. So that'll give you an idea of what it looks like for scanning the edge there and then maybe looking back inside the tree line. I've moved to the opposite edge of the lake. If you look back to your left, that's about 575 yards to the opposite end of the lake. We're going to look at flood right now, and we are in low output in flood. Yeah, the bugs really like it. All right, there's one up. Again. One more time. I have shifted position with the growth that we have this time of year. This is about the best I can do in terms of maximum line of sight across the extent of the lake. I could normally get 600 yards under conditions during the winter time, but we're tapped out at a bit under that. And I'm going for the glory. This is combined flood and spot, low output level. Bump it up one. One more time. And if you can see through the bugs, there's the full 15,000 lumens. It gives you a field of view far wider than I can show you with the iPhone at standard mag. Let me see if I can bump this back a bit. Ah, there we go. There's wide angle. Very impressive, and the bugs love it for sure. So here's another instance where I may use flood. I'm in the medium output level right now, and I really don't need any more than that for this specific example. What I'm doing is, let's say we're searching for a lost person, probably wandered out somewhere, but we have this massive amount of growth. This is where thermal would fail me. You know, if they went out here, had an accident, fell down, a drone with thermal might be great, but thermal at this angle doesn't work. So what I'm doing is I'm just scanning back and forth, and I'm looking for breakages in this growth, anywhere where it looks like a person might have gone through this recently. And yeah, this output level is doing an excellent job, even with haze and particulates in the air. So here's another thing I do a lot. This is a creek search. And this is where I like the combined mode, because it's great to see downrange. I'm actually in eco right now, but I really like to have that side-to-side visibility, because that often allows me to see things that I would have missed with a very narrow beam. So let's bump that up one. I'm getting excellent side-to-side and good visibility all the way to where I have line of sight, and I don't have to go up in a very high output level to get it. So I came out from this direction, and now I've moved into more of an urban park setting. From where I'm standing, I've got almost 500 yards line of sight to the road. So this is a situation where I may have to walk a search pattern. And for patterns, I really like a combination of flood and spot. Now, normally I'd have to do that by turning my headlamp on flood and using a handheld spot. With the LR40R V2, I get two for the price of one. And we're in eco right now. Let me bump that up to low. And then now I'm walking my pattern. Of course, I'm going to have to document this. We're looking for sign. Of course, it's never going to happen right where I'm looking. The advantage of having that spot is I'm going to see something reflective off to my left, and then I can immediately focus on it. But what I like about this light, even with all the haze and particulates in the air, even with all the light pollution from the surrounding city, at these lower output levels, and we're on low right now. Now let me bump up into medium here. I mean, I can go way back inside the tree line there. I'm getting outstanding side-to-side visibility, again, from the lower output levels. max spot while there are no cars coming across. That's in excess of 500 yards. All right, here's one last look in flood. So we are back in the parking lot. I want to do a quick test. How does the combined mode work with photonic barriers? So here we are in the low output level. Let me bump that up. And again. And one more time. So we are in the parking lot area by my truck. I want to show you something real quick. We're in lock right now. So when I go to spot, it always starts off in that eco mode. Let me bump it up one or two. We'll just kind of look around here. When I go to flood, I'm in whatever mode I was in before. There's memory. So let me bump that up a couple. Same thing for combine. Let me bump that up a couple. Now when I go back around, we've got memory all the way around. Now I'm in lock or off. I go back to spot. See, it starts off in eco again. I have to bump it back up, but I have memory for where I was in flood and combined. Then I go back around. Spot is now off. I'm in lock. Then I turn it back to spot, and then we're back to eco, and I have to bump it back up. Not sure what I think about that. My first thought is always I'd prefer to have memory for all the modes. See what you think about that. Interesting set of tests tonight. I'm not through with it yet. I still have to take this light out to the LBJ grasslands, put it through its paces in a wilderness environment. We'll take it out to Cottonwood Lake, which is a much larger lake, and look at it in that environment. I don't know, maybe you've seen enough tonight to make a decision. I really can't say. My job is actually pretty easy. I've said this before. I run the test. You make the decision. I still think there's a lot more testing required. If you'd like to see something in an urban environment like this that I haven't covered, leave a comment. I'll see what I can do. But like I said, next step is going to be the LBJ grasslands outside of Decatur. And as always, until the next review, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching the video.